Know why I always have to start really dumb. Plagiarism.
Plagiarism?
Yep. I don't
Sounds
even
like
need to look at your 3 bullet points for that because I don't know how many bullet
I
points.
have 5.
Oh, see, I can't count that high.
Yes, we're doing plagiarism. There
Yeah.
are 5 bullet points today on the Always Right podcast that JB can't count now. It's fine. All right, so let's get started. We just did an episode and we're talking about when your plot lines and your story falls apart, and one of the key things that we talked about just briefly was plagiarism. But we wanted to pull that out and do a full episode on plagiarism. So we're here to talk about plagiarism.
Plagiarism is bad. Do you want to hear my plagiarism story?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I told you this before. And in my defense, it doesn't matter because I didn't finish college and get a degree. I quit college in electromechanical engineering and I moved to Hollywood to study voice. So here we go. We had to write a big freaking, like a 30-page on whatever. And I chose the Hammond B3 organ because I was in music and it had all the notes and all the sources it cited. And it was in a magazine called Keyboard Magazine. And I knew my professor didn't know that. I couldn't type. And this was before the internet. It's like 89, 90. And so my best friend, Keith Gilbert, went to his house. We got really drunk, and he typed out the whole thing word for word, and I turned it in, and I got an A plus. I would
Well,
never do that.
the thing is though, back in your day
Yeah.
and my day, it was a lot easier to plagiarize
Yep.
unless you had a very so sometimes when you have your English teachers and stuff like that, some of those professors, some of those teachers have read a lot of things in that particular subject. And over the years, reading other people's reports, they know they're pulling something out. Like, okay, I know this is plagiarized. This came from something because I've seen this particular statement in everybody's reports, which is so that was something that we had talked about with the AI plagiarism, where I could notice in some of the discussion boards, people were posting the same thing. Like I was like, this okay, I'm gonna go to AI, I'm gonna ask this question, see what and it would come up with the same thing. I'm like, okay, y'all straight went to AI and posted, because if you enter this exact phrase into AI, this is what it produces out the first time. So
And
so
AI has those quirks too. Like they'll say a sentence instead of using a semicolon, they'll skip, put a dash. So
mhm.
there's common things that, like, if you're reading through, you're like, oh, that's definitely AI, even if you don't catch it in the wording right off the bat.
Yeah. All right, so let's just define plagiarism. Plagiarism has some key different definitions, because there's like direct copying. This is like word for word, when you're not you're not good at rephrasing, you just directly copy. But paraphrasing, Jamie, you
I should be like
paraphrasing.
Keith, but go ahead.
This guy right here. Hopefully I'm pointing in the right direction, because sometimes when I load this onto YouTube, it flips our
Well,
screens.
then I'll do it like this so we're covered.
Yeah. Paraphrasing. I mean, this is also when someone takes the ideas or text without giving the appropriate credit, and it seems as though the ideas are original. Where it's like, I read this paragraph, I'm just going to say the same thing but rephrase it. Um, it's almost like you take a sentence by sentence and restructure each sentence, but you're still paraphrasing, and it is
I've
a form of plagiarism.
I've actually seen people who've studied with me and then they become coaches, which, there's millions of singers, there's only thousands of coaches. And I remember this one kid, he got picked up and did an article for some magazine and it got a lot of play. And I'm not saying I came up with this, but I've never heard this before. So 91, I get home from work and I'd have to learn songs. I put on my Walkman, I go running. And then I would sing as I was running. I didn't want to sing loud to scare people, so I'd sing really tiny. And I coined the terms cardio singing and tiny singing.
Hmm.
And this guy actually did, like, hey, how to build more stamina, da 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 da, and did a whole article about this. He's like, I call it cardio singing, and he posted it, and I was proud of him, and I read it, and then I contacted him after I read it and said, that's really cool, but you might want to quote the guy who taught you that. And I wasn't like jealous, but I'm like, dude, the way you wrote this, you so plagiarized and pretend you came up with this.
Yeah.
And it freaked him out so much. He called. He had them like update it. So yeah, I learned this from a coach, Jaime Vendera, and that's what he had to say. I mean, I always, if I quote somebody or paraphrase, I note the source.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and we've talked about this recently that I have a pet peeve about when you make a statement and you don't give it credit, whether it's an Instagram post, whether it's whatever. When you put something out that you claim as your own idea, and the person that gave you that idea sees it, it's one, a slap in the face.
Hmm.
Two, it's gonna make them distrust you. So just give people credit. It's actually very therapeutic to network with people and learn from other people. I feel
I
like
mean, but why wouldn't you want to do that? Because if I gave credit
because
for
people
someone
want
taught
to
me an
own
exercise.
everything.
Yeah,
Because
if you
people
get
want to
over
own
your
everything.
ego, because if I give you credit, it's going to help you because that other person's like, wow, they gave me credit. They're so nice. They're going to share your article or your post or say, look what so and so did. You're going to gain more following from that.
Right.
So, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
always give credit.
There's also there's also self plagiarism. This is reusing your own ideas and text um without new context, without like
I thought you
I,
was without saying, like, giving yourself credit. Hey, I came up with this
well,
2 books ago.
I mean, in a sense, it can. I mean, when you're reusing your own previously work or ideas and like a new context without acknowledgement, like, oh, I started, like if I did before, like I did before the world was lost, okay, but then I write something brand new and take stuff from that. I'm not even. I'm this. I mean, this is like a minimal plagiarism. You're quoting yourself, but you should ethically say this is where I learned this when I was building this stuff of this. So almost in a sense, you're self-citing,
Hmm.
but it's a form of plagiarism.
And, but
And you're not gonna get in trouble for that one. And it's gonna look weird if you're like, oh, you wrote this book and then now you wrote this other one, but you're
so
saying
you're just
something.
regurgitating, but I'll read books and by an author, and they have 3 or 4 in a series, and they'll be like da 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 da. By the way, if you've read book 1, this is where I came up with this idea and how
Yeah,
it applies to this book.
yeah. It's more of it's. I mean, self plagiarism is more of a misleading to your readers than it is like legality. You're not going to sue yourself type situation. I'm just putting that out there that it is a thing.
Oh, I'd sue myself. I mean, I ain't gonna win. I'm not gonna win anything, but
Oh, that's funny. So here's another. So when you mix copied phrases from various sources and you try to put them together and do not properly cite them, you're creating this illusion that you're the original author of
yeah.
it, kind of what your person did in a sense. That's called mosaic plagiarism. So you're taking pieces of different sources and you're putting it together to create like one original statement that's not actually original because you're not fully using what they said. You're not fully using what they said, and you're not fully using what they said. Bits and pieces together to put this mosaic together. It's still plagiarism.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot because it was removed. The guy who did the cardio singing article,
Mhm.
about 2 years later, he put out a vocal book, and he didn't use the name of Raise Your Voice, but he took 2 other coaches' program names and combined them together. And I'm like, dude, you should not do that. I said that is so disrespectful. Well, it's not. I'm using the word vocal, not singing. I'm like, but younger person, so knew everything and not listening, didn't want to listen. And eventually I'm watching it disappeared. So I think because I seen a couple bad reviews, so I'm sure he got some heat from those coaches. I actually got the book and I read it, and it was a lot of plagiarism. So it wasn't
And
nothing.
plagiarism, point blank, of this thing is plagiarism is unethical, and it can have severe consequences.
Indeed. You don't
Yeah,
want to be sued.
yeah.
You don't want to
Yeah,
ruin your
so
reputation.
I mean, definitely the academic consequences. If you're in a college, you can lose your scholarships. You can like get you know serious trouble. Professional, especially with professional and legal. Even when you're doing legal stuff, they cite the law. They cite the law, um, and there can be disciplinary actions. You can be sued. Like I remember um, the author of the Mortal Instruments series.
Hmm.
Uh, can't remember her name. I think it's like Claire or something like that. I can see it visually, but and my kiddo has a lot of her books. I think she has almost all of them in the series and her sub series and her shoot off series and stuff. But she was accused of plagiarism on a very public level, to where she had a movie out from the first book, which we
Hmm.
love, Moral Instruments. And she had all these books, but she got like accused of plagiarism and went to court, all these things, people accusing her of these things. And her book sales, I think, kind of felt, or not felt, but took a beating.
Yeah.
There was no second movie. They did try to do a series. I feel like she lost some credibility, but I mean, my kid loves the way she writes, so
I mean, do you know if she won or lost?
I don't remember if she won or lost. I just know there was an accusation, and I don't remember what come of it.
Yeah, because I see that in songwriting too, and you see that I could see a lot of authors writing very similar. Like you didn't know about the John Grisham book you're talking about that's similar to
Yeah,
Canvas.
yeah.
And what if that came out? I was like, you plagiarized my idea. No, I mean, we're human creative beings. We're going to have similar ideas. So I think with that, they would have to literally, like, really analyze those books to see.
Well, yeah, I think there was something about like copy pasting phrases and things from like Twilight and from Harry Potter, but I don't know if that's truth. I'm just saying that even if it wasn't true, she took a lot of heat from it. So be very careful with,
Yeah,
how you do
the
that.
closest, I mean, of course, like I said, I will, Age of the Sigil, very not similar to Lord of the Rings and Sword of Shannara, but in that vein because I love that style of fantasy. But the closest I really got was I named a character Skizix, and there was an old comic with this guy named Skizix, and he says Skizix spelled backwards is Skizix. Or I liked Severus Snape, so we came up with Drayden Syphilis. So it was a little similar.
Yeah,
Eh,
that's a little sketchy there,
yeah,
Jamie.
yeah, that was actually Daniel's idea. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll go
That's
with it.
super sketchy. We might have to put you on blast then.
Severus Syphilis, yeah, they're going, man, I hope she don't
Yeah,
sue me now. So,
yeah. I might have to take this out of the podcast just for the sheer fact we don't know about this. Keep this under wraps.
or
So when we're
Organica.
just since we're talking about some fiction stuff, because typically with plagiarism and fiction, it's important to differentiate. There's plagiarism in academic work that's different than fiction work. It is different because there is creative expression in fiction. There's storytelling, character development, all these unique plot structures. Not trying to name your characters so similar, that type of thing, like you just said you did.
That's not even that close.
Mm-hmm. But
There's Joey and, wait a minute, no, that's Jill and Bill and Will.
stop it. Stop it. Yes.
I'm fighting
You
for
are
it.
you borrowed extremely heavily from these other ideas.
Yeah, but you're talking one word.
Yeah, but these plot twists but again, these plot twists and these name things like that, they can lead to claims of plagiarism.
Hmm.
Period. But with fiction, you've got originality and influence. There is a difference. Being original to your story, it's important that authors are understanding this is a draw from existing literature and culture and ideas to come up with your own original idea from that. Um, it's very key to be original, and it is very hard. That's what makes being an author right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, are you the same? I mean, essentially, with adult erotica, are you all using the same erotic stuff? I mean, it's just crazy. Um, to replicate someone else's, and you're just putting a new storyline with it. Like, what was that one? It was like dinosaurs and beasts, and it was some kind of adult fiction. I'm like, what are we doing? Are
Oh,
we
I
have we run
remember
out of
that. Yes.
yes? Are we run out
Dinosaur
of so many
erotica.
ideas? Yeah.
Dinosaur erotica. I got, like, where is that at? No, I'm teasing.
Hmm.
I remember you bringing that up once. Like, you're not going to believe this. Uh,
So there's an episode I want to do, and I'm just going to briefly talk about it. And it's fair use consideration. So there's laws that can be applied to different types of fiction that allow writers to reference parodies of existing work
yeah.
without infringing on copyright. So we'll definitely cover that one, but definitely consider, how you work your writing around a parody of someone else's work.
Yeah,
Like
or if you
Saturday.
want to be safe, you can look in public domain because, like, Pride and Prejudice and was it Zombies?
Stop referencing that one. You've never even read it.
I know, but I like the name of it.
I know, but you need to read it before the next time you use
Have
that
you
as an
read it?
option. I don't use it. You do.
All right. I'm going to buy it on Kindle right now. Live on this podcast.
Live
That's
on this
pre-recorded.
podcast.
Live on this pre-recorded
Oh my
podcast.
gosh. While you're finally going to buy the book that you constantly reference that you've never read, something else is to keep in mind character and setting similarities. While it's very common to have like an archetypical like setting, in medieval times in old London or in the Arabian areas, like a lot of similar settings happen in fiction. That is not plagiarism, but creating a character that is extremely similar to someone else in that same setting, like names and attributes, like backstory. These also can lead to accusations of plagiarism, and you got to be very careful. So, how's it going with looking for that
There's a
storyline?
3-book series.
Wow,
Pride,
you have three
Prejudice, and
books.
Zombies annotated, Dawn of the Dreadfuls, Dreadfully Ever After. Maybe I'll get hooked on book 1.
There you go.
And then I'll reference it all the time.
Something else that we talk about. What do you?
All right.
We talk, about the tropes of the genre. That again is not plagiarism because vampires have a trope.
Yeah.
Uh, Werewolves have a trope. The certain fantasy books have tropes that you want to keep with. I mean, because if they're not there, we've talked about if those certain tropes are not in your book of your genre, people may not like it. You've got to be careful skirting on that. But it might not be considered plagiarism, but you have to make sure you're still keeping it somewhat original.
Yeah, because you know what? Look at Stephanie Meyer, the cool, and people think I'm stupid for saying this, but their skin was like diamonds, and they could kind of be out in the sun to a point. They could be in light, and so that was something new. They drank blood, but
Of animals and not humans.
yes, but so drinking blood will be a trope. But if somebody came out all of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, my vampire's got diamond-like, shiny, sparkly skin." That would be definitely plagiarism because we haven't seen it before. I'm assuming we haven't seen it before. Stephanie Meyer had that.
Right. Well, so Stephanie Myers was accused of plagiarism, but it was quickly debunked. Someone tried to say she stole her idea, and but it was debunked, and we now have what we have. But yeah, community. Something I put on here for my personal notes was community standards. So, like when you have a book style, we've talked about this before in other episodes. We've suggested joining a community of different authors and different communities like fantasy or sci-fi. Join those communities and kind of assess the originality of your book based on kind of like the expectations of that group. You can even ask that group, hey, what's everybody's thoughts on this? Do you think this has been done? These are my ideas. Get readers and critics from that same type of community to also give you feedback. Like, this seems a lot because readers typically have read a lot of things. So they're going to be able to say, this sounds like this other book that I read.
Carissa, what's your stance on, say you come up with a really cool idea and you join one of those and you start asking, what do you think about this? And your book's not even close to being done. Would you be worried that somebody in that group's going to steal your idea and beat you to the
Yeah,
finish line?
I mean, there's always that thought process. But at the same time, there's the time stamping that if you put that out and someone is in that community, I mean, you could always say, "Hey, you stole my idea."
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you the book's not complete and you're in those communities like, "Hey, I got this idea and my vampires are going to glow in the dark." And it hasn't been done, and your book's like a year from being produced, and all of a sudden 3 months later somebody used AI to help them finish a book, and they're like, we got glow-in-the-dark vampires. And then you can trace them back like, wait a minute, they actually converse with me in that group. So I mean, you might have to go back through, if it's not deleted, and timestamp that just to prove it, that you were the one that brought the idea to the table. I'm just saying, be closer to being done with your book if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Put a pin in that idea when you say, when we get off of this episode, put a pin in the idea of glow in the dark. and come back to me.
Okay, I done forgot that 3 seconds ago. What was it? Okay,
Okay,
no.
glow in the dark. Okay. All right, back to some nonfiction parts of plagiarism, though. So, with a nonfiction, like we talk about, making sure that you understand the consequences if you're going to do this, if you get caught. But there are a ton of plagiarism detection tools out now, not only for the academic side for teachers to use, but for yourself to prevent it from happening. Especially with Grammarly. Grammarly has a great tool on there that you can just hit the AI and plagiarism, which the AI one's kind of awful because AI sounds so human now that it's really hard to detect between human
Hmm.
and AI. And I had this discussion with a professor because when you start upping AI's ability, it's going to be very hard to decipher which one's AI and which one's human. But I said the best way to kind of check it is plagiarism, because plagiarism with AI comes from open source. So if AI is plagiarizing, it's coming from other works. So you should also have a high score on plagiarism, saying that a high percentage of your work is plagiarized.
Yeah, I
Does that make
did.
sense?
I was always worried about that with my first book, but that's why like I promote so many books I studied on voice. I have other coaches I learned from. I have them do guest articles. So I'm like, hey, this is how I came up with this. Just so they were credited within the actual context of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I know that like academically there is a strict guideline a lot with plagiarism and stuff like that. But one of the things that we've talked about recently is citing your sources, and every different cultures have a different perception of how you should cite sources. Different colleges have different standards. Different academic fields have different ways of their how you're supposed to do that. I've worked with like the APA, MLA, and the Chicago style in college settings, but it's very important. It's very important to not
Very
plagiarize.
important.
Very important. Yes, very important. It's very important to cite things when you are making a statement in a nonfiction book. Period.
Kripke.
Get out.
That's who you remind me of from the Big Bang Theory. Hey, Sheldon. Quipke. It's Quipke here.
Yes. What was his name? Kripke?
Yeah. Quipke.
Kripke.
Yeah, I said Quipke. It's very important that
Does
you
that guy
understand.
actually sound like that in real life? I wonder.
No, but then it also reminded me of Bobby Boucher. It's very important when you do. Okay, I don't want to go off that tangent. I'll be lost for 15 minutes.
You'll be in your comfort zone.
Telling you, I need Adderall for you to reel me in. My doctor is
Okay.
like, nope,
Nope.
not you,
I
because you would
know.
like it too much.
Is this like candy?
I didn't know you said one a day. I thought it was every hour.
One a day when you need it, and I need it all the time.
Yes.
All the time. Like, is it time yet?
Hours are like days to me.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So again, this is something that citing your work is important.
Very important.
Very important if you are making a statement that is nonfiction. Now, there is a little bit of a gray area when you are writing creative nonfiction. That if you're theorizing things, that your own theories, your own thought process, if you are writing in a way as if these are my perspectives, these are what I think. This is kind of how I did this with Before the World Was Lost. I cited the professor Samir, the one who found the Bosnian pyramid, his friend that he sent me on the torsion energy, the Australian archaeologists that helped me. Those people helped me. I gave credit to those people, but anything else that it was my perspective, I could take free range on making those statements. There is a gray area.
I got a thought just like that, but it's totally different. So it's way back to when you mentioned college.
Hmm.
Diane, when she was getting her master's, my wife,
Hmm.
she was really stressed out. It was a lot of work because a 2 year program, they gave her an accelerated program. It was 9 months. And there were some other girls in there, and they had a big paper to write for one class. And this professor was very tough. And the girls like, yeah, I'm already done. A couple of them, like three of them. And like Diane's like, how? well, we found this person and we just paid like $200 and they wrote it for me. And, we'll hook you up if you want to do it. And Diane's like, absolutely not. I'll do my own. And she struggled and she worked and worked. And my wife's always like ace. And so I'm sure she got an A, but it probably wasn't like an A plus. But those three girls, guess what happened? They got
Happened.
busted because
Mm.
the person who did their papers for them plagiarized out the wazoo. And I don't know what happened with them. It was pretty bad. So yeah, I don't know if all three lost their scholarship or if they got kicked out of the program. Don't do it. I know a lot of people use ghostwriter. If you're in this because you love writing, just do it. You don't hire a ghostwriter because you want to be an author. Go through the process. Be yourself. Because what if you're like, yeah, I don't got time. I got an idea. I'll let them write it, and they do exactly that. And
Yeah.
then right out the gate, you're shunned. You're not like, yeah, we can't trust this author.
Well, yeah, and that's why I feel bad about like that one author who, whether she did or not, I don't know if it's real or not that she actually did plagiarize, but that tags onto your name.
Yeah.
It tags onto your name. So some of the we've talked about these, like legal ramifications, essentially, that there can be things that can happen if you're accused of it and found guilty of plagiarism. Like you can, like, again, you can get kicked out of school, you can fail a class, all these things. But say you post or you publish something. So when you're in an academic setting, you are essentially going to be at the academic level of your punishment versus if you publish something as your work and you plagiarize, you're going to have like issues with copyright infringement. And like when you publish things, you have to cite, are you not plagiarizing this? You have to click boxes, and so you're claiming, no, I did not do any of this stuff, and then you're later down the road found out. Well, that's almost like you literally just lied. You lied about all of this the whole time. And it overlaps with, a lot of not asking permission. Like you're just essentially taking credit for something you didn't do, and the original creator could seek financial reimbursement.
Yeah. And what scares me, Chris, I'm not saying it's happening, but like when we started Kindle, there were maybe some thousands of books. Now there's millions and millions of books. So everybody's writing a new book in the same genre every day. What if you don't plagiarize? You didn't read anything, you thought you came up with something amazing, and then someone's like, you copied my book because they had a very similar idea.
Well, that's like with the Canvas one. If I would have wrote Canvas the way I was writing it, everything would have been completely different except for the fact the serial killers left the victim like a famous painting. That was the only similarity.
Yeah. But
And
it was
so,
enough to make you think.
but it was a significant similarity that I'm like, I have to change this because that just seems like yeah, it's already got a movie, it's already got a book. And respect for the author, I'm just going to change this.
Yeah. No.
So yeah,
Kudos.
yes, yeah. Which again, if someone finds out that you plagiarize, the civil lawsuits that can come in, you have to pay for your attorney, all these things for that. Cease and desist orders. Plagiarism can be a cease and desist order demanding that the infringement work be removed completely, and you can no longer do certain things within that realm. Like you can't even revamp that writing. Like you could be legally bound to say, not only can you have to take this off, but you cannot even write this title because you've already shown that you essentially plagiarized it. Yeah, like, oh, sorry, I'm trying to get squeaky chair. Yeah, and anything that you make off the book until it's found out to be plagiarized could be
Yeah, you
owed
could.
to
Oh,
the
yep.
original person. Yeah. So if you, and this comes down to you as a publisher, not you as an author under a publishing company. If you are found that you plagiarized, some professionals in some situations, they'll also come after your publisher, and wow, that's going to be crappy for you because imagine the media, like all the stuff that would come to them, they could also sue you, because you just like slap their integrity out the window.
Indeed.
um yes.
Kids, don't do plagiarism.
Mhm.
It's like, don't do crack.
Don't do the plagiarism trick. Yes. Yeah, so the point of this episode is to essentially make sure that you understand the seriousness and consequences of plagiarizing and what it can do for you as an author if you do it, in your reputation. And honestly, it just sucks. So don't do it.
Yeah, and the subconscious reason for this episode is to scare the crap out of you so you don't go
Are
down
you
this road.
scared? Don't
Yes.
do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
This is this is your brain.
Yeah.
This is your brain on drugs.
This is your brain on plagiarism.
Yes, this
So
is your brain on plagiarism.
now you're
Don't
sounding
do
like
it. Don't write
now you're
anymore.
sounding like another Adam Sandler character. This is your brain on plagiarism. I can't remember which movie. Your husband would know.
Yeah. Well, it must be filtering in because, you talk like this stuff all the time. I'm just like drawing it in.
I'm a bad influence.
All right. So this was a good episode for those who weren't really clear on what plagiarism is and where it falls between the lines of fiction and nonfiction. If you feel like there is something you're not sure of, if you're copying something, definitely put it into one of the plagiarism detection systems that they have online, and it'll give you feedback. Better safe than sorry. You know what I mean? Run it through your readers. Make sure that you have someone who reads a lot in that genre. That if you're doing fiction, if you're writing fiction and you go to a fiction, so if you're a fantasy writer and you go to a sci-fi, most of the sci-fi people are not even going to know if you've plagiarized because they don't read fantasy. Go to your group. Go to the group that fits your community of writing. For academics or for songs, I know that Ed Sheeran, he did that. He had to go to a court case and prove that you can change a chord, and you just can't sue people for changing chords because there's like,
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah. But writing music, go sample stuff. How close am I to this? Like da da da. Because there is a guy on Instagram who does like, this is the original song. Here's what Drake did, and he copied this, da da. Or this is what so and so did, and look how they copied this, and whatever. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never would have put that together, but
Scary.
just like, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But like, was my I remember my first, not really the first time I heard plagiarism, but I remember it being a discussion, was the plagiarism thought process of Ice, Vanilla Ice's song that
Yeah.
has opening thing from Queen.
Yeah, but no, they're different. One's dun 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 dun. The other was dun 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 chicka dun dun.
Chickadunda, chickadunda.
That's what he did in that interview. It's not totally different. I had a chick.
Had a chick. No, I remember that whole like debacle, and that just kind of came to mind when I was talking about music. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, all right. So, good episode. If you'd like to find ways to listen to us or watch us, you can go to alwayswritepodcast.com. You can see the icons for YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music on there, and you click any of those. You can also see our social media where you can click and follow us. We are only on Instagram and Facebook consistently. The other ones are just there for looks.
Yeah.
If you would like to reach out to us, you can absolutely email us at alwayswritepodcast@gmail.com, and we will get back to you in a timely fashion. And we will not plagiarize our emails.
We will. I don't remember
we
that's what. Yeah.
We will not plagiarize our emails. All right. Good episode. As always, I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And I'm author Jaime Vendera, and always right.